Welcome to the Health Systems CIO Show. I'm your host, founder, and editor-in-chief, Anthony Guerra. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Julia Adler-Milstein, PhD, Chief of the Division of Clinical Informatics and Digital Transformation at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Adler-Milstein, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, great. You want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role?
Absolutely. So I work at UCSF, which is, I'd say most people are familiar with the UC system, but we're a little bit of an anomaly because we're a health sciences only campus. And so we have a health system, and on the campus side, schools of medicine, nursing, dentistry, et cetera. I lead a new-ish division. We started it about 2.5 years ago with really the recognition that, the field of clinical informatics is a cross-cutting one. And there were many people doing this work, but they lived in, cardiology or neurology or, all of the sort of traditional parts of an academic medical center, but they didn't really have a home. And so this division brings together, a lot of people who are, doing research on how different types of technology are changing the way that healthcare is delivered, the way medicine is practiced. And it's been really fun to kind of build it from the ground up at a time where there's so much exciting change happening. And so, it's really just a group of faculty. We have a clinical informatics fellowship that sits in the division, and then a lot of different initiatives that address, questions of the future of AI. We have a diagnostic excellence coordinating center. So it's really been a home for a lot of different people and initiatives that are all thinking about this cross section of digital tools and healthcare.
Yeah, how did a little bit about how you set it up. Org charts are always interesting, dotted lines going everywhere, committees, governance, representation. I mean, this must have been fairly complex deciding how to situate this and make sure all the voices that needed to be engaged were engaged, and yet you could operate efficiently.
Yeah, that's right. In some ways, we have divisions of lots of things, but most of them are either clinical divisions or basic science divisions. And so we are unique in the sense that we're neither. But we do have clinicians who live in the division. And so we had to figure out, how can you be, a cardiologist? And, we have, like many places, primary and secondary appointments. So it allows the faculty to kind of live in multiple places. But probably the hardest part was thinking about how to span, the set of interests that are represented in the division, because that's everything from sort of full-time researchers who are, trying to build research careers, to people who are the ones that are running our health system informatics. So, our, CMIO and our chief health AI officer, right? They're also part of the division. So I think that's been, honestly, for me, the most fun part is really thinking about what are the things that bridge from research to practice and from practice back to research. Because that's really the heart of, where so much activity and interest is happening, is at those intersections. So it's really set up as, we bring in, speakers. We have, different initiatives that sit within the division that really try to bridge, what's happening in the research world to what's happening, in the health system. And, with adoption of, a wide variety of tools, each one of them, there's an opportunity to study it and study its impact. And so we try to do that alignment where we can.
Any interesting adjustments you've made from the initial structure and theories of how this would work best to the 2.5, 3 years you're in now? I would imagine you get lessons learned quickly of, hey, we thought this would work out the way we set it up, but you know what? It would be a little bit better if we did it this way. Anything interesting come to light so far? And how I assume it's very important to try and be flexible. Things are so new, happening so fast that on every level, people have to be flexible now about incorporating new technologies, new workflows. It just seems so critical to anything being successful today.
Yeah, what a great question. I don't think anyone's asked me that yet, so it's fun to think about. Maybe I'll point to two things. The first is working with industry. I think we thought that would just be easier, frankly, that, that there would be like a lot of opportunities to partner with industry in different ways. And everyone's like, oh, you're in the Bay Area. That should be like, it should be like falling from trees. But it's hard. It's hard to find alignment, with industry in a way that really feels mutually beneficial. And so I'd say that's a part that we're still trying to figure out the best models and like where that alignment exists. So that's been, I'd say, hard, but not, something we still hope to do. The second piece is also sort of the alignment piece, and our health system is their day jobs are running a health system, right? There, I think our CMIO once said, like, on a good day, research is third on my agenda. It's like, they're not built to be our laboratory. And so again, it's sort of figuring out where we can bring those worlds together in a way that feels mutually beneficial, but we can't, slow things down for them. We have to answer questions that are relevant in a timely way. And so that just takes a lot of sort of alignment, relationship building work. But the explosion of AI tools has really, I think, allowed that to happen in a really exciting way. And one of the sort of signature initiatives within the division has been really thinking about how do we build for our health system an approach to AI monitoring, AI value assessment. And that's been a real sweet spot, because there is a real need for researchers who understand how to measure the impact of new tools in clinical environments. But there also is a need on the health system side to understand the impact that these new tools are having as they're being introduced. And so I'm really proud of this initiative that we've launched called IMPACC, the Impact Monitoring Platform for AI in Clinical Care, because it's created a lot of opportunities for researchers to bring their skill sets. But at the end of the day, we're going to deliver a product for our health system that they're going to use to really assess the impact of their investments in AI tools.
That's really fascinating, and we'll get to sort of your JAMA viewpoint, which is why I reached out
Yeah.
to you. But I'm having
Yeah.
a good time here, so I want to just go with it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's fascinating the way you describe the constituencies you need to work with and engage with and serve the clinicians and the researchers, and how they're quite distinct in terms of what they're doing and their objectives. And you also mentioned the challenges of engaging with clinicians who are phenomenally busy and almost, my wife's a nurse practitioner, so I get a little inside baseball on how busy they are. And it seems like to get a second of anybody's time is a challenge. And I always say, you better be ready. If you do get some time, you better be ready and have your A game to make the most of it. As opposed to, I forgot that. Well, let's reschedule. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work so well. So they are pretty distinct, right? These clinicians and researchers. Just any more thoughts you have on serving those two?
I mean, I think, health systems are run like, they tend to be more top down, more hierarchical. The decision making, flow is usually like, again, org charts matter a lot more. Research is like the total other end of the spectrum. You're sort of like, you are told like you have to build your individual empire and, make your mark, and you have to be flexible and adaptable and just kind of, chart your own course. And so I feel like just at the outset, sort of the research world and the health system world are just structured very differently in terms of sort of how work gets done and the kinds of people who are attracted to each kind of environment. But at the same time, I think people who come to an academic medical center, like they're there because of the academic part, right? There's curiosity, there's sort of interest in just kind of going beyond, your day job to say, like, we want to think about these bigger issues in healthcare and digital transformation. And so I find that natural curiosity about the world and understanding and reflecting on, what's changing and what's working and what's not is like what brings everyone to the table. And then there's sort of different things you have to offer to keep them, interested and engaged. But that, I've been really heartened when we started the division, just how many people showed up. I mean, every faculty meeting, I'm like, is this the one where no one's going to show up? And nope, it's just sort of more and more people who are coming and listening and wanting to talk about their work and connect with colleagues. And so that's the part I think that's like, been sort of the easy and fun part. But, keeping people engaged when, again, there's sort of this natural tendency to revert back into the organizational, environments and ways of doing work that you're most familiar with, that's the hard part.
All right, that was fun. Thank you for letting me go off
Yeah.
on that little area. But let's talk about the JAMA Viewpoint that I reached out to you for. You did it with Dr. Bob Wachter, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to give the folks an overview of that, so a little bit about the genesis. Obviously, we all have to make a decision about why we're going to do a paper on anything. You decided to pick that. This is sort of the issue of people, and this is one of the biggest dynamics that I cover on the CIO, CTO, sort of the IT enterprise IT suite side. It's a huge part of what they're dealing with. It's whether to stay in suite for any particular application or and stay with their EHR vendors offering or to go with a niche product. Huge issue. You tackled it in a paper, and you pretty much found, which I hear all the time, which is a tendency to stay in suite if it's at all even close to being somewhat good enough, so to speak, because and the reason is because there are a lot of advantages for the enterprise that accrue when you stay in suite. And so it's that, good enough that sort of if it does 80% type stuff, your paper looked at that, and I think, and you tell me, but I think you're essentially questioning, is this always the right move? Because essentially, even though at a high level, it makes sense perhaps, on a different level, on an apples to apple, when you're not taking perhaps that larger picture into account, it may not make sense. And so then we talk about all the policy issues. Can policy be changed so there's more plug and play? But I think I've done enough of an overview and probably botched it there. But tell us a little bit about the genesis of the paper, the ideas going in, what you found, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, it was a perfect
Oh, thank you.
overview. And I'm sort of at a point in my career where I get to write pieces like this that are more fun and just, a lot of times they're just reflecting back, what everyone knows. Like, I don't think there was anything in this article that was like a surprise, but so many people reached out to say, just thank you for writing this. I think it was really about sort of giving visibility to an issue that a lot of people were experiencing, but was sort of hard to point to as a real impediment in the clinical AI marketplace right now. And so, yeah, I mean, it came about because I actually really started with Sara Murray, who's our Chief Health AI Officer here at UCSF, and I were chatting about, in her role, like, why is it so hard to procure these third-party tools, and not just sort of why in general, but like, what are the specific points of friction? And we said, like, there's just nowhere that's really laid them out. Like, what are all of the individual factors that come together to make this so hard? And so we just started, sort of articulating them, and then asked Bob, who's the chair of medicine at UCSF and is an incredible writer. I'd be remiss to say, if, he just published a book on AI, and so it's been really fun to kind of write with the two of them, because I do think we bring each of these sort of complementary perspectives. And we said, let's just try to lay out, a framework for the factors that drive these these market dynamics, and then see if we can come up with some recommended solutions. And I have to say, my background training is actually in health policy. So I always come at this with, like, is this a policy problem? Like, is this something that the market is going to fix, or is this really where you need policy intervention? And when we started writing this piece, I don't think it was clear to me just how clearly this is something that does need a policy solution, that the market dynamics are so entrenched. And so, if we do want to change things, I think the only option is for policymakers to become involved. And so that's really what the piece became, is almost a call for policy intervention if we do want these dynamics to change. And then if we were going to do that, we said, well, we should probably offer some policy recommendations. And it was surprisingly hard to come up with them. I think partly because any, incumbent will always have an advantage. And so it will be very hard to break those. But in the EHR space, I think it's become clear that integrating third-party products is just very complex to get the sort of data models aligned and the interfaces and just all the things you need. It's particularly sticky in healthcare. So anyway, that was sort of the piece and sort of how it came to be more of a policy, call for policy intervention, but also why I think, if you read the piece, we have some ideas in there, but we also say like, this is an area where we're probably going to need some new creative approaches to what a policy intervention would look like. And hope that maybe this will engage, our field in discussions of what that could look like.
Yeah, so you mentioned Dr. Sara Murray making a comment to you, something along the lines of why are these so hard to procure, as sort of a genesis that got you guys moving. I'm just curious about what we mean by that, because I suspect you mean like why so hard to integrate, because it's not hard to procure, right? You can buy them, you just have to convince your C-suite. You'd have to convince the CIO or whoever. The organization would have to be convinced, let's go, we want to go outside a suite. There are enough compelling reasons to go outside a suite. But the challenge can come in that integration, and perhaps not even in sort of a surface level integration, but on the more of a deeper integration. There's a lot of, Dr. John Lee writes a lot of good articles about the dynamics of what happens in Epic when you are sort of all in on Epic and you're true to what they call foundation, which is their data model, like their big. If you sort of stayed true to that and their naming of things, the benefits accrue. And I think that's one of the things that you probably have challenges with when you go with a niche vendor is, even if it's integrated at a surface level, it may not be integrated at the level he's often talking about, where you get those down. And that's what you're talking about. It's like, it's complicated. So, I don't know if you could tell us a little bit what you guys came up with for the policy recommendations, but yeah, it seems to be, it would be complicated to get the same benefits of staying in suite.
Yeah. No, so I mean, I completely agree with you that the integration is hard, but I actually also, what we came to realize is like the procurement piece is hard too, because you need enough visibility into the product to even know whether you want to make the case for investment. And then at each step along the way, right, you have to negotiate a new contract. You have to do a security risk assessment, right? There actually are all of these procurement pieces that like we've already done them with our enterprise EHR vendor. And so so I actually think it's both parts that are hard. It's not just the integration piece. Like you're right, writing the check is obviously not hard, but procurement has a lot more to it than just, convincing someone to write a check. And so that actually, I think it's both pieces. Anytime you start with a new vendor, especially in a large health system, like there's a whole lot of steps you got to go through before you get a contract signed. And so that's every point you have to say, is this product worth even starting that process, right? All of the people hours and that have to go into that. And then you get to the integration work, which to your point is also very complex and deep. And then you have to maintain that over time. So that was, again, part of the piece was like really laying out like all of these points of friction that starts from even the moment you're considering a third party vendor all the way through to maintaining that product over time. There's sort of lots of speed bumps. On the policy recommendation side, I do think, there's been, a now probably decade-long push to make it easier to integrate third-party tools into, certified EHRs. And this is the whole, standardized API framework and, a lot of it coming out of 21st Century Cures. And, it's worked okay. Like, I think, the policy is sort of working in the sense of, there are more, standards-based APIs that are out there and being used. But, third-party vendors still report a lot of friction, especially accessing sandbox environments, really testing the integration piece that you were just referring to. So I think we have a good start on a policy framework, but, we need to go deeper on the integration pieces. And then it's a question of on the procurement points of friction, there are standardized contracts, there are, there are other things that, could be introduced into the ecosystem that might help with that. Even just more sharing among health systems of who they've contracted with and the, all of the assessment work they've done of vendors right now. That's really reinventing the wheel every time. And so, I do think there are other possibilities for how the industry could work better together to make it easier to work with third-party vendors.
Right, because that would be a good thing overall to have more competition is always better. So you got competition at different levels to think about here. You have competition between EHR vendors, which is one thing, right? You could not pick Epic, you could pick Meditech, you could pick Cerner or Oracle. So there's competition there. But then, as you mentioned, once you've settled on an EHR vendor, we would even like theoretically, at least for it to be easier to integrate. To me, that's where you could get more policy stuff is around the technical integration, the information blocking, things you can't do, things you can do, openness, right? Because to me, that lends itself a little more to the policy recommendations as opposed to these third-party vendors making it easy as possible to work with them. Now, you mentioned another good point is Epic being open so that these third parties could figure out how to integrate and play nice. But that's, again, you're asking a for-profit company to make it easier for another company to compete with them, that's where you get like super weird in terms of, monopolies and competition and all that. So I don't even know how that would work. But we understand it's a for-profit company, so we want it to be open, but then on some level, it makes sense that it doesn't do certain things that a not-for-profit company might.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I've also been very interested. I think we're now starting to see some sort of third-party integrator plays come up in the market that are really saying, like, we'll do all the vetting of the AI products for you and work on the integration, and you sort of just connect to us, and then you'll get access to all the third-party tools. And so sort of it's a middleware play, but I think in a way that could take some of the work out of all the health systems sort of doing this for themselves. So I'll be very curious to see if they're successful. And we haven't talked as much about, kind of academic medical centers versus, smaller community-based health systems, where I think these dynamics are even harder to overcome. But again, I do think some of these new third-party platform solutions are really aiming towards that market, which is, sort of further encouraging.
Yeah, it's interesting. From the conversations I have, the CIOs seem to take it as just the way life is. So it's not a great source of frustration per se. It's just, hey, these are the decisions we have to make. And this 80-20 thing is just the way it goes. You probably get more frustration on a couple other ends here. One would be the individual clinicians are often the ones making the requests internally to the organization saying, I found a great tool. I've come across a great tool, a great application. I'd love to use it. And it's better than what we have, or it's better than what our incumbent EHR is offering. And because of the 80-20 rule, they're often told, we're not going to go in this direction. We're sticking with our core application. So you could have frustration on that user's part saying, yeah, you explained it so I understand, but I'm still frustrated that I can't use this tool because it's better than the tool you're making me use. So there's frustration there. You could see frustration on the third-party vendor side saying, I can't get in the door. I can't get in the door, right? Epic is everywhere. Cerner's in a few places, not everywhere, but Epic is everywhere. Meditech's in a lot of places. If I can't get in one of those three doors, I can't get in anywhere. I can't play. I go home. I got to go do something else. That hurts innovation. That hurts the industry and all that kind of thing. So those to me would be the 2 points of frustration. And the IT suite in the health systems just saying, hey, I have to do what's best for the organization. And this is what makes sense. If you want to change policies and change that for me, go ahead. But I have to deal with reality.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
think you laid it out beautifully, and that is like what we see, and it's Yeah, I mean, I do think, we've been sort of at this game long enough that the frontline clinicians, like, they sort of have stopped asking because it's like so rarely. So, I don't think that means they're happy, but I think like, it is, I think it's more the second thing which is like all of these interesting companies that knock on our door and we're like, and even to take the first few steps with them is like, we're not staffed, right, to do that type of sort of exploration and engagement. And even to sort of figure out where, which of these companies has a promising solution. So that's that just right out of the gate. I think it's, to your point, it's really hard just to get your foot in the door as, as a company that may have a great tool, but just, it's so hard to sell into, especially large health systems.
Here's another scary thing for third party, poor third party vendors. A number of people I've interviewed have talked about how because of the current AI ecosystem out there with the LLMs and all the tools out there, that it's easier for them to build than it's ever been before. So they have a challenge. They look at their incumbent. Now, this funny, in light of this conversation, they're still probably going to go with the in-house EHR tool rather than build even. But build has almost becoming a second choice. It's stay in suite if they have it. If not, we could build and then third party. So it's getting even tougher on that third party vendor. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, again, different places I think have made different types of investments in build capabilities at UCSF. That's just not sort of been something that we have prioritized. But to your point, it could get to a point where it's, cheap and easy enough that we say, yeah, you don't have to hire 200 engineers. You could just hire 5, and then it's a really different type of investment. I don't feel like we think we're there yet. And like we do have, some capacity for internal development, but again, we really limit the amount that we invest in that. Just again, because we found that over time, it's really hard to maintain, these homegrown solutions. And but yeah, it's, as I said, you've like perfectly captured where the dynamics are right now, which is things are changing so fast. It's really hard to know what your strategy should be. And so we've made the right decision for what feels like right in this moment, but that could be different a month from now or 6 months from now, where we say, yeah, we should actually be doing a lot more internal development because it's gotten so easy.
Right, right. Yep. It's an amazing time and you're in an amazing place. Uh, talk about being, you think about it, you're at one of the best places in one of these new departments that's just drinking from a fire hose as things are moving 1,000 miles an hour, and you have to be on X to see the latest updates of what's happening every day, every few hours. It's pretty amazing. You're pretty good. Listen, I've been here a little while too, so I got lucky. Um, you know, it's about the fastest, one of the fastest paced places you can be is healthcare, IT, AI, health systems, all this stuff. Um, so any thoughts? How do you stay on top of it? How do you stay up on what's going on? So that, people come to you, they want to have those conversations with you. They want to be enlightened. So you're drinking from a fire hose too, right? Trying to stay up on this stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like I am up. I don't even know that it's possible to feel like you're staying up on things. I mean, there's so many things that are happening in so many parts of the ecosystem. And especially as someone who like really cares about the policy all the way down to kind of what's happening in my local organization. There's times where that feels like that is like too far a bridge to span. But I don't know. It's like you have to hold all the pieces because they all have such an interplay with each other. But I remember, this, right, there's this like lawsuit, against some of the, I guess it's in, well, anyway, I don't want to get too into the specifics, but, there's some recent lawsuits in this space that have emerged. And I remember, someone reached out to say, oh, can I interview you about this lawsuit and this dynamic of sort of whether there are these, bad actors that are sort of using some of the APIs to put, incorrect information into EHRs. And I was like, I'd never heard about this or that this was happening. again, it was one of those moments where I was like, this is clearly a blind spot for me, because I just hadn't heard about this whole set of behavior in the industry. And again, we'll see if it's real and to what extent it's happening. But I think we all have those blind spot moments where you're like, oh, wow, this is, something that I've heard nothing about. And so then, I go and try to read up on it as much as I can. But yeah, I just think it's impossible to stay on top of everything. But just try to spend my time in a mix of different venues. I mean, I'm very involved in AMIA, the American Medical Informatics Association. Again, just hearing what my colleagues are talking about and thinking about within that professional organization, spending time with ONC, and then trying to spend time with my own health system. It's a sort of complementary set of perspectives. But yeah, there's just too much happening to ever really feel like, oh yeah, I got this. I feel like I know kind of everything that's happening.
I don't know if you remember, but was it around TEFCA and the QHINs? Is that what the
Yeah,
lawsuit? Yeah. I
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I drank from that fire hose when I came across that one, and then I jumped into that, and I was like, wow, that's an interesting one.
Yeah,
I've done a few interviews on that, so
yeah,
good stuff there. But yes,
yeah.
great stuff. We're just about done. So any final word to the wise here about either the content or maybe what's your next thing? Anything you're working on now? Any other viewpoints you got coming up, or anything interesting you're looking into or plan on looking into?
Yeah, I mean, one of the fun parts about being at this point in my career is that people reach out and say, would you like to write something, and so I had a colleague from University of Michigan who wants to write about the NTAPs, these like the way that Medicare pays for innovative technology.
Hmm.
And again, this is something I knew nothing about. And so I spent some time reading, and I guess there's a proposal to take away one of the pathways and so it was actually based on the JAMA viewpoint that this person reached out and said, listen, if this payment pathway goes away for new technology, it could actually worsen the dynamics that you just wrote about in the JAMA piece, because it will make it harder for companies that qualify for this to be able to then get for the health systems they're selling to basically get reimbursed for using the technology. And so again, have sort of quickly gotten up to speed on what this whole policy framework was, which I wasn't familiar with. And now, working, I mean, he's leading the thought piece, but, working with him on sort of trying to at least call attention to a potential unintended consequence of this approval pathway going away. So yeah, that's the latest. And again, it's sort of one thing leads to another, which is, it's the nice part of being in this field is sort of how, these issues all end up coming together in one way or another.
Listen, I think we've learned that it's okay if somebody asks you about something to say, give me a minute. And
Yeah,
let me get back
100%.
to you. You could jump in. You could do a lot in 2 hours, right? You can really get up to
Yeah.
speed on something in 2 hours. And with the pace things are going, we all need to do that. So, I think that's all we had time for today, Dr. Adler-Milstein. I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I hope we can catch up with you again down the road.
Thanks for reaching out. This was a terrific conversation.
Have a great day.